The Stone Age was an extremely important time in human history. It was the beginning of human history, the very dawn of who we are today. It's everything. It's the beginning. So, why is the Stone Age so important to art history? Well, way back when, we referred to this time period as the Paleolithic era. We refer to it as such because lithic comes from the Greek word stone, and paleo means old. So this is literally the old Stone Age. This is before human writing. This is before humans comprehended symbols. This was the beginning of everything that you are today. Now, what's interesting is the fact that humans had been around for over 100,000 years until they took basic tools and started to actually form them into art, or what we would consider art. After about 100,000 years in human history, through our slow but tasking evolution, what you have is a huge creative explosion that comes forth. We know this because way back in the day, a little tiny girl named Maria went exploring with her archaeologist father. While they were exploring through an ancient cave system, she happened to look upward to see this. What she inadvertently discovered in the ALTAMIRA caves were ancient man's works. Many scientists at the time disproved that there's any way they could be from the Stone Age, but in fact they were. Ancient man used to try to tell stories, tell about his hunt, tell all about his life through pictures. So, the caves paintings are dated around 15,000 BCE. That's a really long time ago. But there's many, many other caves with this same kind of work. This isn't reliquated to one single cave. The most famous, of course, is the French cave in LASCAUX. There are paintings of horses and other animals all over the cave walls, and they're really well done. What's most interesting is whenever artist Picasso eventually went over in LASCAUX and saw some of these paintings, he was quoted saying, "We have learned nothing." Most of the artwork that's found in these caves is relating to animals, deer, bison, horses, and rhinos. But these animals, we're not quite sure why. There's not a whole lot of signs of humans, and when they are, they look kind of weird, and there's no landscapes at all. So scientists, archaeologists, artists have wondered time and time again, what are they there for? On top of that, it's not just one type. There's also many handprints, literally blown into the cave walls from men, women, and kids alike. Everybody was getting in on the painting business. But just like Picasso said, how much have we learned? How much have we learned indeed? Well, if you're art historian and cave expert Henri Boy, who originally was a Catholic priest, you would say that all of these fine cave paintings came originally from a time where they solely thought about hunting. His evidence, of course, the fact that in the cave walls themselves they found little nicks and divots where arrows had pierced into the wall as if they were used for target practice. Now, that sounds good and fine, and that answers a lot of questions about what these cave paintings actually are, except for the fact that the animals that they found paintings of aren't necessarily part of their diet. They found remains around these caves that don't correlate to the animals that they're painting. Then, to make matters worse, they didn't paint just animals. Occasionally they did paint humans, and when they did, it was usually with a mixed perspective. But at the same time, they also painted things called tectiforms. These tectiforms were glyph-like shapes and patterns that people still speculate today as to why would they paint them in the first place. There's one other prevailing theory. That theory is this. What happens whenever you're in a cave at nighttime? Fire in the bottom of the cave, flickering against the rocky cave walls, and you might see something like this. These animals that we found on the cave walls have multiple limbs. Now, possibly the artist was just desperately looking for an eraser to try and clean that up, but more likely, as the flames flickered against the cave walls, you'd only see one facet at a time, thus giving this animal a sense of animation. Were these the very first cartoons? I don't know, but it's pretty interesting, right? Okay, so that does it for stationary art. But what about portable art? Things we like to take with us, right? I've got a really cool phone case that I've got a really nice picture on top of. These guys wanted to carry around their artwork as well. Primarily, they carried around this fine-looking lady. This lady here, her name is the Venus of Willendorf. Now, she's a little bit old for you guys, unfortunately. She actually has as far dated back as 28,000 BCE, so she's a little bit old. But suffice to say, she was one fine-looking lady. Understand that back in the day, they used to carry these around. Now, they'd also have other talismans and other portable art with them, animals and different gods that they may or may not have prayed to, but we find a lot of her in different areas all over the world. Now, what's interesting about her are the obviously accentuations on different body parts. These body parts obviously are related to things that would be very important to ancient man, right? You have obviously a little more rotund figure. This lady would definitely be able to survive through very, very cold winters. Some would say Ice Age. Fair, fair. Then, of course, we can take into account the other aspects of this woman's anatomy. She is a fertility god, or at least a sign of good fertility. Well, this person here was able to tell us, ancient man, what we were looking for, right? Someone that was able to bear children. Maybe she's pregnant now, or maybe she had been in the past, but she obviously can bear children. We also know that she's portable by the fact that she can't stand on her own. Her little knobby legs aren't going to stand upright. This was not meant to be presented as much as carried with you along for a very long trek, because these Paleolithic people were nomads. They moved around a whole lot. Now, we've also found other portable art. We've found clay pots and many other fertility symbols along the way. That moves us into the Mesolithic era. Now, we know lithic stands for rock, so meso stands for middle. So this is the middle of the Stone Age, right? So the middle of the Stone Age takes place around 15,000 BCE, so we're still very, very old. During this time period, humans, start to cultivate dogs. We begin to hang out with them and domesticate them. We also begin fishing, which is, kind of cool. So now all of a sudden, you're able to get your fishing rod and go fishing. Okay, so now what? Well, now we move on into the Neolithic period. Now, the Neolithic period is known for people beginning to settle down, form cities, defendable cities. They also go through and introduce agriculture. They're not moving around like those Paleolithic guys. They don't need portable art anymore. What they need is something that they can defend with, which leads us into the idea that this new Stone Age, Neolithic, introduces weaponry. Before the Neolithic period, in general, we found plenty of tools, but most of these tools consisted of bone, animal or human, with little pieces of flint that's like a really sharp rock, kind of wedged in there. Now, as far as weapons go, there was a lot of different types of weapons, right? You had your plain Jane spear, and he did the job, but, that was the same weapon used by your ancient ancestors. You needed some more high tech. So they start introducing other weapons like blowguns, okay? And they eventually will introduce the bow and arrow itself. But around the same time period as the bow and arrow is being thought of, you have a wonderful weapon of mass destruction named an ATLATL. This ATLATL basically consisted of two parts. So you take your ATLATL right here, and in essence you'd have your ATLATL right here, which is basically just a hunk of wood with a little notch at the end, and you'd notch in your dart or your spear of some sort, kind of rest it on your shoulder like so, and when you would fling it, well, it would go a lot farther. This way, I don't have to sit here and try and spear the mastodon and worry about getting crushed. Instead, I can keep my distance and, you know, get him from afar. It's one of the first projectile weapons, other than just chucking a stone, that involves some level of human intelligence. Now, let's not forget about megalithic art. It's big. It's really, really big. It's megalithic! Megalithic art is gigantic. It is mega stone, megalithic, right? These giant prehistoric monuments can be found all over the world, all over. But the most famous of all of them is one you've heard of called Stonehenge. Now, Stonehenge has been around for a long time, since 2300 BCE. So we're getting much closer in human history to where we are today, but still many thousands of years ago. This ancient Neolithic man decided to build these giant totems. To be fair, we're not quite sure why. People speculate that it was for certain rituals, maybe it was a calendar. It told time by how the shadows and lighting fell on it. People speculate the idea of just it's a celebration point, or even that it's a burial ground. We've found human ashes nearby. It's pretty interesting, but what's really neat is the fact that it's not the only one. The idea of a circle of stones, or if nothing else, the post and lintel style system is found all over the world. We call these dolmens. The idea of having this kind of portal tomb. In essence, you would put your burials in here, and really just, in essence, just a post and lintel. Your posts and lintel on top. It's an ancient form of structure. What makes Stonehenge so interesting is not the fact that it's gigantic. I mean, it is. They're 10 feet tall. And not the fact that these are giant stones either. They're 4 tons each. But what's interesting is the fact that there's over 80 of them, and the stone is made up of a type of stone that's kind of known as bluestone. It's not technically all the same. They're from all over. But the stones aren't found anywhere near the location. They're found 140 miles away. That's pretty far. So we wonder and speculate, how did ancient man, Neolithic cavemen, move these gigantic rocks? Well, what people speculate is that perhaps they would cut them out of the stone face, place them onto rafts, push them downstream, then pick them back up again, and put them on rollers and have oxen lug them up to the top of the steps. But even then, you have to lift them once you get them there. It's a huge engineering feat. This is not pouring concrete. This is lifting heavy, heavy bluestone. It's pretty intense stuff. But ancient man was able to do it. And they were able to do a lot of other neat things too, as soon as the Neolithic settlements began to take hold. So, where do we go from here? Well, at this point, things are looking pretty good for humans, right? We have creativity flourishing, we have weapons, we have new structures, we have people settling down, and agriculture. All of a sudden, humans aren't running around back and forth trying to be nomadic tribes. All of a sudden, we're able to kind of settle down a little bit. So, next time I'm going to talk to you about what happens whenever civilizations begin to form, specifically around a very fertile area. See you next time.